Well, finally done it. After hours of sitting here with myself, arguing back and forth like William Dafoe's Green Goblin.
Performance enhancers. Bingo. Me, your greatest creation. Bringing you what you've always wanted. Power beyond your wildest dreams, and it's only the beginning.
I have finally put together my top 10 best movies of 2023 list. And let me explain something to you guys. This was hard. This was a hard list to put together. I mean, there were so many different gems that came out this year. There were so many different bangers, so many unexpected hits that completely just took my breath away. 2023 for movies essentially was, for me, one of the best years in cinema history. For me personally, in my 25 years of living, this, for me, on a basis where I'm actually consistently able to go to the movies as much as I want to, this was one of the best years I've ever witnessed in film. I can't stress that enough. 2023 had so many different vibes that just really all worked in so many different ways that I really was not expecting, and movies that I truly didn't think were going to be good at all, they ended up being great. Some movies that I wanted to be great, they disappointed me. But as far as looking back on everything that came out this year, and truly what even I'm about to tell you is on my top 10 list, the movies that didn't make this list should tell you just how amazing of a year it was based off that itself. It's like there have been years where it's like sometimes if one movie is left off someone's list, I'm like, how did you miss that? How does that not make your list? But this year, I understand how some movies don't make... Well, there are some movies on my list I wouldn't understand if they didn't make your top 10 at whatsoever. But then there are movies that didn't make mine that even made me shocked. But it was all really a testament to how amazing this year for film has been. Cinema fans, we are in good hands right now. I'm talking about true cinema fans, not just the comic book lovers. Comic book lovers, take your time. We gotta wait till 2025, but our time is coming back. Our time is coming back. But as far as the cinema lovers, our time is here, and our time is here now. And look, we just gonna stop. I'm gonna just stop BSing around and just get to it. I'm sorry I looked off into the distance. I was trying to get my words together. But look, these are my top 10 best movies of 2023. Hey guys, it's your guy in the chair here, and look, this is my top 10 best movies of 2023, and before I get into the list, I do want to reiterate some things, just first starting off with how amazing the year of 2023 has been. I mean, like I said, there have just been so many gems, so many bangers, so many hits that came out this year, and honestly, aside from the fact that there were even movies that got pushed back, like Dune and The Bike Riders, and they were supposed to make this year even more complicated and more crazy as far as just the incredible hits that came out. Aside from those movies not coming out, we have still had what I think is one of the most legendary years of movies in a very long time. I mean, there was just so many hits. And honestly, the best thing about this year for me is the fact that a lot of the gems we got this year are not comic book related. Although there are some big comic book hits this year for sure. I mean, not as big as like, the ones in the past, of course, but I just think that, this year not having as many comic book gems gives people an opportunity to see more original work, hopefully, and see movies that they could actually go back into a theater and experience without it being some big summer blockbuster. Like, hopefully those movies that really give us those old school classic timely feelings that I think that we definitely need as moviegoers nowadays, because people don't necessarily want to go to the movies to enjoy things like this anymore unless it's a big blockbuster, unless it's like a big cinematic universe type movie or whatever. And personally, 2023 attested to the fact that you can definitely make films that don't need to be connected to some big universe. I mean, there are some that are connected to big universes for sure, but there are movies here that you can definitely just tell original stories and resonate with audiences unlike anything that's ever been done before. And that's just all a testament to 2023. Now, before I get into my list, I do have one other thing I want to say. I understand that. Now, look, my best is not going to be your best. My favorites are not going to be your favorites. Let's just get that out of the way now. Anything that is not on this list, which I can definitely see me getting a lot of blowback for a few movies not making this list. Like if you heard my Goblin chanter, you've heard of a movie that's not on this list. John Wick. John Wick did not make it. So if you want to click off, I'm sorry. I even have honorable mentions, and John Wick did not make it. I'm sorry about that. Killers of the Flower Moon did not make it. I'm so sorry. It's not that these movies were not good. It's just when it came down to me making this list, these movies did not hit me or stay with me, I should say. These movies did not stay with me the way these other ones did. And I made sure I gave all of my movies in consideration multiple watches and made sure I gave these movies fair chances to actually, make the list, because I hold my list to some very high standards. So I wanted to make sure I made the most accurate list for myself. And now that I feel like I have, without further ado, let's get into these honorable mentions. Alright, so my first honorable mention, I got Air, which I believe to this day is one of the most forgotten about. I won't say forgettable. There's a difference between forgettable and forgotten about. This is one of the most forgotten about films of 2023 in my opinion, because not enough people talk about how incredible this movie is. It came out in March or April, I believe, which feels like such a long time ago, seeing as it's almost been a year ago now that this is January. But this movie came out such a long time ago, I feel like people truly forgot how amazing this entire film was. I mean, Ben Affleck's directing was top tier. Viola Davis and Matt Damon's acting was spectacular. You were so invested in conversation. There was such great writing in this film. I mean, a story where they barely even show Jordan himself, and it's about that guy, but it's not necessarily about him, more so the impact that the shoe had, the situation that Nike was put in. I mean, so many different things were highlighted in a story about Michael Jordan that did not feature him so much, that still made that film all the more impressive, all the more interactive, all the more just so thoroughly impressive, and I absolutely love that film. So that's one of my honorable mentions. All right, honorable mention number 2. I got 5 of these, so apologies if I'm taking too long to get to the actual top 10 list, but had to make an honorable mentions list because there were just too many good ones. But honorable mention number 2 is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And look, if you've never heard of this movie, I understand. I don't think this movie had a great marketing campaign. I don't know how much the studio actually believed in the film itself, but for those who have seen this movie, understand that this thing was absolutely tremendous. I mean, Rachel McAdams gives a nomination-esque performance in here. I don't know the little girl's name that plays Margaret, but her and her entire friend group, they were just so amazing throughout the entirety of the film. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is truly one of the most pleasant surprises of the year. I like this movie way more than I was supposed to, and I would put this movie in the category as movies that were forgotten about, but honestly, if you've seen the movie, it stayed with you from the moment you left that theater. That movie stayed with you. That movie did not leave you. It definitely did not leave me, which is why it's one of my honorable mentions. But Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is definitely one of the most pleasant surprises of the year. All right, honorable mention number 3. I got A Hunger Game Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Look, I think this might be a kind of outlier in a lot of people's top 10s, if it even makes anybody's honorable mentions list. But for me, I had to mention this movie because I did not expect for this movie to affect me the way it did. I didn't expect for this movie to be as good as it was. Rachel Zegler and Tom Blythe, the more and more and more I think about their performances, just completely wowed me. And then when I went back to watch the Hunger Games films after watching Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, those films just completely hit you a lot more when you understand the foundation of Snow's hatred and Snow's character arc, and honestly just the way Tom Blythe played that character in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was absolutely tremendous. Like I said, Rachel Zegler was phenomenal. Viola Davis, Peter Dinklage absolutely killed it. I can't think of Rachel Zegler's boyfriend's name, but he was in West Side Story. I'm going to make sure I put it somewhere here in this video. He needs a shout out as well because they all did a tremendous job of making me not only care about a franchise that I truly thought was dead and just didn't need to be, brought back to life again, but they truly made me actually like really emotionally care and engage in what was going on in this film, in this story, and I was just completely taken away. All right, so for honorable mention number 4, we have Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, this movie I feel like is definitely on the forgotten list of 2023. It's not a forgettable movie whatsoever, but it is definitely on the forgotten list because, one, this movie chose to come out, I believe it either came out a week before Oppenheimer and Barbie. Yeah, I think it came out a week before Oppenheimer and Barbie, which you're not going to be able to give the impact you really want to give on not only Tom Cruise fans but Mission Impossible fans at that. You're not going to really be able to give the impact you want on your audiences if your movie literally comes out a week before the Barbenheimer effect. Like, that's just not really going to work. So hopefully they plan their scheduling out a little bit better for Part 2. But as far as I'm concerned, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 is everything I want from a Mission Impossible movie. Was it as good as Fallout? No, not necessarily. But I promise you, the action is here. The set pieces are loud, if that makes sense. The action set pieces can be loud. It's just everything you want from a Tom Cruise action film. This dude just continuously shows to impress me on just how alive he makes us feel when watching these films, man. How alive Tom Cruise makes audiences feel, how revved up we get, how energized we get from watching Tom Cruise do his Ethan Hunt type stunts. And honestly, shout out to the entire cast. We're talking about Rebecca Ferguson, Haley Atwell, Vanessa Kirby, I mean everybody, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, everybody in this film is awesome. And the villain, while I think he will have a much bigger impact in Part 2, I thought he did just enough in Part 1 to stay fresh on our minds and get ready for whatever Part 2 is going to deliver, which I think is going to deliver an extravagant conclusion to Part 1. But at the same time, this movie made it alone because of that train sequence. This movie made my honorable mentions alone because of the train sequence. The train sequence in that movie is worth the price of admission itself. And then the cliff jump, pure cinema. Enough said. All right, my last honorable mention is going to be a movie that completely snuck into my heart and just never went away. I heard about this movie so much, and I finally got a chance to sit down and watch it, and it was one of the most beautiful stories I've seen all year, and it was Rye Lane. Rye Lane is one of the best romantic comedies I've seen this year. It's also one of the best romantic comedies maybe I've seen this decade. Palm Springs may have something to say about that, but they are both Hulu movies that completely snuck into my heart and never went away. But as far as Rye Lane is concerned, I absolutely love everything from these two, the two main characters' chemistries. I love their differences. I love how they bring the best out of each other, how they make each other get out of each other's comfort zone. You're finding someone who really pushes you to expand beyond this shell that you are of a person. Like, you really find somebody who challenges you and pushes you to be not only your best self but your most adventurous self. And Rye Lane, from beginning to end, the directing style, the way some of the camera shots were, just the back and forth banter between the two main characters, just how their dynamic works so well with each other. Rye Lane was truly one of the most pleasant surprises of this year, and I absolutely adore this movie and hope everyone checks that movie out. But on to my top 10. All right, look. At number 10, I got Wonka. And I get it. I understand it. I did not expect it for this movie to be on my top 10 either. I know people are shouting out their screens, how could you have Wonka over John Wick, over Killers of the Flower Moon, over the Killer? Look, musicals are a soft spot for me. Like, musicals are, like, for me, and a lot of people can tell you, once somebody starts singing in a movie, or once somebody breaks out in a song or a musical number, if it's good, it's gonna win me over. I don't care how good the movie is. And honestly, Wonka's amazing, period. Like, it's much more than the songs, but honestly, the songs are a very pivotal part of it. But this movie came and snuck into my heart and just never left. I saw this movie 3 times in theaters. It hits the same every time. It's full of wonderment, full of magic, full of just whimsical, so many different amazing synonyms to whimsical. It's so many different words just all packed in a tiny little thing of chocolate. It's so many just amazing different feelings. This movie had me smiling from ear to ear the entire time. This movie is hilarious. And like I said, I did not expect this movie to make my top 10. I don't like Willy Wonka movies. I did not like Johnny Depp or Gene Wilder's movies at all. I did like those movies creeped me out as a kid. So Wonka being here is a surprise to me just as much as it is to you. But the more I think about this movie, the more I listen to that soundtrack, the more I think about Timothée Chalamet's extravagant performance. There's no way I could have left this movie off my top 10. Wonka amazed me in so many different ways, and I absolutely adored it. All right, at number 9, I got a movie that I've been an advocate for ever since it dropped in March, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves. I will literally continue to die on this hill that this was the most underappreciated, underseen, not underwhelming, but just underwhelmed as far as people actually watching this movie. Just one of the more underperformed movies of 2023, and in so many different ways. This movie was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, this movie was made from the guys who created Game Night, one of my favorite comedies of all time, and as dumb, I'm somebody who will tell you straight up, I thought these trailers were absolutely stupid. I didn't think the marketing for this movie was good at all. I really thought they were just trying to sweep the movie under the rug, just kind of push it out there and just let people know, hey, we dropped a movie. But when I tell you I walked into this film not really expecting much, and I walked out having had one of the most fun times of 2023 in a theater this year, Dungeons and Dragons was truly beyond expectations. Like it surpassed my expectations so much. Like I'm telling you, this movie was funny. The action was actually really good. Michelle Rodriguez was amazing. Chris Pine was phenomenal. Jonathan, for those who get that reference, Jonathan was great. I think her name is Sophia Lillis and Justice Smith. They did a good job too. And for some reason, I can't think of the guy's name who played the wizard. So excuse me for a second. I have to look that up. But I mean, regardless, look, this entire cast and this entire movie truly just exceeded all my expectations. His name, Regé-Jean Page. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I shouted him out as Zinc. I'm not really good with the names, but trust me when I say I have been an advocate for this movie all year. Like, I have been telling people, like, Dungeons and Dragons, you gotta check that movie out because it is one that easily flew under the radar. And if you ever get a chance to watch this movie, I promise you it is a ton of fun, more than you are expecting. All right, at number 8, I got TMNT Mutant Mayhem. Look, I absolutely love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm a huge fan of the 2003 cartoon. I am a big fan of the Turtles in general. And honestly, when they first announced that this movie was coming out, I was kind of like, I was just kind of like, okay, like I wasn't necessarily like too excited. But then, you know, I see that Seth Rogen's name is attached to it and he's a great producer. And then I see that they are trying to take it from a perspective of where they are very young. And I was open to these ideas. But then I sat down and watched the film and I walked out thinking I need more and more of these turtles as soon as possible. This movie was absolutely spectacular. First of all, Ice Cube as Superfly, one of the funniest characters of 2023. Him and Ray Fillet. Yeah. I'm telling you, these characters were absolutely hysterical. I love watching the Turtles in this sort of light, I'll say. I loved how we're watching them truly from a younger age and they're actually teenagers and we actually get to see them grow up. And I just love how this world was built and how this story was told from a perspective where we can actually grow with the Turtles now and appreciate what we would see once they have those battles with Shredder and things like that. We don't just automatically just jump to Shredder. We actually give them some time to build up to him. Mutant Mayhem delivered in many different ways that I really did not expect, and I can't thank Seth Rogen enough, man. He is a genius. Seth Rogen is truly a genius when it comes to this producing thing, man. And acting, too. He's a great actor. But look, producing, Seth Rogen's killing the game. Dude has too many hits on his hands. And if Seth Rogen's handling one of your projects, you should feel 1000% okay with it, because he's just too good. All right, so at number 7, I got The Holdovers. Now look, walking into this movie, I was expecting some Oscar nomination type performances here. I was expecting an Oscar nomination type movie, because the trailers and Paul Giamatti and the buzz that this was surrounding this movie, all of that gave me the notion that, yeah, this thing actually might be pretty powerful. I walked out, I was completely astounded. I mean, this movie not only gave me like a Christmas classic that I feel like the world's been needing for a very long time, but it just gave a story that I truly feel like can resonate with so many different people on so many different levels. And Paul Giamatti just truly gave not only one of my best performances, one of my favorite performances of the year, but one where I truly think like there could be a case made to why he should win Best Actor of the Year this year. I mean, Paul Giamatti's character in this movie was absolutely tremendous. I thought he killed it. I thought he absolutely killed it from beginning to end as this teacher. Dominic Sessa, this, and you'll probably hear this news a lot when it comes to talking about this film. The fact that it was this kid's very first feature film ever, and this kid played this role like he was a 10-year vet, is astounding. I mean, I was just completely in awe of not only how well acted this movie was, but just how relatable it was, and just how, honestly, while you can't necessarily relate to Davine Joy Randolph's character unless you've gone through that specific situation, all of these characters just have a way of making you understand where they're coming from, why they feel the way they do, and just how around this time of year, how these feelings and these morals and values and these characteristics that make us who we are, how Christmas time kind of brings more of that out of us, and how if we feel like it's hard for people to love us because of who we are, that'll be highlighted around this time. And I just wanted to make sure that statement made sense. But look, from beginning to end, I was just absolutely tremendously baffled at how amazing this movie was. I mean, there isn't really enough I can say about The Holdovers and just how special of a movie this is, but this is truly not only one of those nostalgic movies that I feel like moviegoers need nowadays, but it's just one of those films that you'll look back on and truly appreciate and call it a timeless classic. I think this is one of those movies that you truly call a timeless classic. All right, so at number 6, we got Poor Things, and this is where things kind of got difficult for me, because I really wanted Poor Things to make my top 5. I really did, but it got knocked out in recent weeks, and for damn good reason. But look, Poor Things, regardless, was one of my favorite films of the year, because not only of Emma Stone's absolutely tremendous performance, but just the tale that this movie was telling from this kind of perspective. And honestly, you could deem this as a very weird movie, but if you really pay attention to what's going on in the grand scheme of things, you'll understand what kind of story this is trying to tell. And honestly, just the thing that still amazes me about this movie is how well they were able to tell this story from a child's mind being put in the body of an adult. Basically, like an unborn infant being put into an adult's body and basically growing up and learning about life from there. And you just really see a lot of the world for what it is from a perspective that you really don't have anymore, because we don't have that curiosity that children do. And this movie really highlights that and shows us the world from a perspective where it's like, it's really unique to see things like this. Like, again, it's like I really haven't thought about the world like this since I was a kid, and I really just enjoy everything about this movie. Like, truly, like, I enjoy the weirdness. I enjoy the absolutely hysterical satire that goes on throughout the film itself. Mark Ruffalo, while he is one of the shittiest characters, is funny as hell. He is absolutely hilarious in this film. Emma Stone is tremendous. William Dafoe killed it. Rami Youssef, everybody. Yorgos Lanthimos, I believe is the director's name. Everybody in this movie absolutely brought it, and I truly hope Emma Stone gets a nomination for this film. And honestly, I hope she wins. I hope she wins for Best Actress, because I like, she completely just left me completely speechless. All right, so at number 5, I have Barbenheimer. Yes, you heard that correctly. Barbie and Oppenheimer. Barbenheimer. I combined them into one because there was just, honestly, I combined them into one because I kind of cheated, and I wanted to make room for, some other, or another movie on this list. But I actually did see this movie, or I saw Barbie and Oppenheimer in the same day, and because of how amazing the film universe is, and we made Barbenheimer a big epic event. If you saw the movie, in my opinion, if you saw Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day, then you witnessed Barbenheimer. So you're able to combine those movies into one and put them as one movie on the list. If you saw them 2 separate days, you witnessed Barbie and Oppenheimer. Me, I witnessed Barbenheimer. So at number 5, I have Barbenheimer. But I'm going to talk about Barbie first. Look, Barbie, honestly, throughout the entire year since I saw these films, Barbie and Oppenheimer were fighting for like 4 and 5 until I just decided to make them 5A and 5B. But I enjoyed these movies both beyond my expectation. Like like I said, starting with Barbie, I just loved how funny this movie was. I loved how into the world I was. I loved how Ryan Gosling's Ken was just not only Kenuff, but just Ken everything I just ever needed to be and more. Like, he was absolutely astounding. I loved Ryan Gosling as Ken. I loved all the Kens in the film, especially one that's, I feel like the more I watch Barbie, the most underrated character in that film is Ben Kingsley Adir, the guy who's playing Bob Marley. Yo, he is absolutely hysterical. Please pay attention to his character and a lot of the stuff he just does in the background. That dude will literally have you dying. Like, he was so good. And honestly, I just enjoyed everything the Barbie movie had to deliver. Now on to Oppenheimer. I mean, this is what cinema is made for. I mean, this is why you go to the movies. And honestly, nobody had an issue with the fact that this movie was 3 hours. Everybody was sat in their seats. I did see people running to the bathrooms, but I seen people trying their damnedest to hold it in and try to witness everything that this movie had for you, because not only was this just an intense situation where you're just watching somebody make the atomic bomb, but it's just like the fact that he's being put on trial, the conversations that are going on behind closed doors. Everything is just made to be such an intense scenario where it's like you are truly engaged in more than just the atomic bomb building itself. You are engaged in the conversation. You are engaged in the narrative. You are engaged in the visual effects. You are just completely just taken I don't know what the word is, but you're just taken away by everything going on screen. And the most thing that I have to give this movie credit for is that every single person that has a credit in this film, I'm talking about down to the person who only had one line to the person who had half a line, everybody who had something to do with this movie killed it. Like, beyond Cillian Murphy, who, yes, I do believe should be nominated. Emily Blunt, I do believe she deserves a nomination as well. Robert Downey Jr. damn sure deserves a nomination for sure. But I'm talking about everybody, from the guy that played Einstein to, I don't necessarily want to, Casey Affleck. I got to think of all these actors and actresses' names in this film. Look, Benny Safdie, everybody killed it. Because I ain't about to think about everybody's name right now. There's a lot of people in that damn movie. And all of them killed it. All of them did a phenomenal job. But at number 5, yes, I have Barbenheimer. All right, at number 4, I have the movie that literally is the reason I had to shake up my list so much, because if it wasn't for this movie, Poor Things would have been in the top 5. If it wasn't for this movie, Barbie and Oppenheimer may have got separated. But at number 4, I have the Iron Claw. And I have to take a long pause, because if you've seen Iron Claw, I don't think we have still fully recovered from what went on in that movie theater, especially if you did not know the story of the Von Erichs. I didn't know the story about them whatsoever, and watching this gruesome honestly gut-wrenchingly beautiful tale come to life. I'll say it's gut-wrenchingly beautiful because there is beauty behind all this madness and chaos and darkness. There is, but it's really hard to kind of see it in that light sometimes because it's just a very gruesome tale about a tragedy where I couldn't even imagine going through something like this family went through, and everyone in this film who acted gave one of the best performances of their entire career. Now, before I get into those, I do want to say that this movie really resonated with me because I am someone who comes from a brother. I don't want to say a brotherhood, but I have a brother, and me and him would always compete for my dad's emotion or my dad's love and affection through sports. And so this movie really hit me where home was, and I'm talking about like Naruto punching Sasuke in the gut type hit. Like, this joint fucked me up, but it was a movie that I felt like was so necessary for people to see, and like I said, the entire cast killed it. Zac Efron gave the performance of his career. Zac Efron easily gave one of the best performances of his career. I do believe he should be nominated for this film. I believe I'm sorry, let me get my words together. I believe it is a crime if this young man is not nominated for what went on in this film here. Jeremy Allen White absolutely killed it. Harris Dickinson, he is going to be a big name to follow in the years to come in Hollywood. Holt McCallany killed it. Mara Tierney, absolutely triumphant. Everybody in this movie was absolutely astounding, and I do believe Sean Durkin deserves a Best Director nomination because some of the shots in this film will have you on the edge of your seat, and I'm talking about beyond the wrestling scenes. There are some shots in this film that truly have you shaking in the theater. It is ridiculous, and I do think this movie also deserves a Best Picture nomination. Please, I need for Iron Claw to get all the awards it deserves, or at least the recognition and nominations, because this movie deserves your attention. It will demand it once you press play, but it definitely deserves your attention as well. All right, and as for my top 3 movies of the year, which have pretty much been locked up since July, number 3, I got Past Lives. I am a sucker for rom-coms, like I said. Now, this movie has comedic relief, but I would say this is more of a romance than a comedy movie, or than a rom-com. But I'm a sucker for romance movies in general, and this is the one to see. This Past Lives was just something of a journey where I truly did not expect to be so devastated by the end of it. I really didn't even, like, this movie was tearing me apart because it's like, I don't even know who to root for in this film because everybody played their role so well. I mean, yes, I was rooting for Greta Lee and I wanted her and TOU to end up together, but then comes John Magaro, if that's how you say his name. Then comes John Magaro, and he just puts on a performance that really has you just completely torn as to who the heck you want this chick to not only end up with, but just who do you want one of these young men to deserve this woman. And it's like they all highlight the issues that they have. They all highlight, their past relationship with each other, and then, what Greta Lee and John Magaro's future is together. And all credit to Celine Song for directing this very beautiful, heart-wrenching, because it'll warm your heart for a little bit, but you definitely gonna be crying by the end. Like, it's heartwarming, but I'll say it's more heart-wrenching than heartwarming. But all credit to Celine Song for directing this immensely beautiful movie. I loved it. I loved everything about this film from beginning to end. The score is incredible. The cinematography, the chemistry between the two. Chemistry is everything. And when I tell you all 3 of these characters, TOU, Greta Lee, and John Magaro, when I tell you all 3 of them had triumphant, tremendously, ridiculously amazing chemistry together. All of these actors completely just blew me away, and so did Celine Song by directing this immensely gorgeous film. All right, at number 2, I got Talk to Me. For me, there is nothing better or I mean, I like to say this phrase a lot, that there's really nothing better than a really, really good horror movie. This was a really phenomenal horror movie, man. I mean, this movie here, I saw at least like 4 times in the theater, and it left me speechless every time. I took away something new from the film every time. And honestly, the one consistent thing that I always took away was that, look, I don't know if it's possible, but if Sophie Wilde can at least get some sort of nod or some sort of like recognition that she was at least looked at, or like some acknowledgement that she was at least looked at to get nominated for this performance, I would appreciate that, because I'll die on the hill to say that this girl deserved a nomination for this movie. I mean, Sophie Wilde gave one of my favorite performances of the year. Like, I don't think she would necessarily be able to win because Emma Stone kind of ran away with it. But when I tell you Sophie Wilde gave one of my best performances of the year, this girl was an absolute powerhouse when it came to being when it came to being a screen presence, and especially in a story like this, where I really appreciate the fact that when a lot of people ask if horror movies are scary, it's really just all kind of decided on the like what scares you, and what factors into actually making you scared of something. What I love about this movie is they make this scenario to be something as what would truly be the environment that this hand would be in today. And what I mean by that is, like, they truly make the movie set up to be like, okay, some people in an environment like this or in a party sequence, some people would take it as a complete joke, some people would take that shit serious. Like, it's like you'll have so many different reactions to if this thing is real or not. And the fact that it's a social media craze, it's like nobody even knows if this thing is real or not and if we should be playing with this. And I love the fact that this movie kind of plays on that narrative to where this could actually truly happen, because social media is such a huge factor in today's world where we really can't depict if something is real or fake. And playing with something like this hand here, you could truly fall into something like this. So I like this movie for the fact that if somebody were to ask, is it scary or is it like, well, is it truly horror? It's horror from the standpoint that this could actually truly happen, and especially if you're playing with someone, or if, yeah, I guess you could call it playing because it's a game. If you're playing with someone who, like Sophie Wilde's character, has been through so much grief and so much loss, where she just truly can't really control her emotions and she wants to keep going back and keep playing. That's where like her performance really starts to shine, where it's truly just beyond her obsession with the game, but she's really only using the game to talk to her mom. Once you really start to get into like her character and really start to get into, just how crazy this game is making her, how much, this thing is actually getting to her, she truly just, as the film progresses, gives a performance that'll leave your jaw literally on the floor. All of these kids really do. I think the kid's name is Joe Bird, is Riley. Joe Bird's possession sequence in that film was absolutely outstanding. I mean, these kids were doing some tremendous acting in this film, and all credit to, I'm just gonna call him the Philippou. I don't know if they're brothers or not, but Danny and Michael Philippou. Credit to those guys, because they really know how to direct horror. They really know how to keep your direction or keep your attention in one spot and then move it to wherever they need it to once they want you to move it there. Like, they do a really good job at just making very tension-filled horror. And something on top of that, like I said, just having Sophie Wilde be the lead in this movie made it all the better. I absolutely adored this movie. And at number one, a movie that has literally been sitting at my number one ever since I first walked out of this theater, ever since I walked out of my first screening. I've seen this movie at least like 8 times in the theater. I've seen it maybe 25 to 30 times this year. It is by far, for me, one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It is truly a testament to my favorite superhero character of all time. It's truly a testament to not only who he is as a person, but who the Spider people are as characters themselves. And I don't even know, I'm kind of just giving it away at this point. Look, at number one, I have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I gave this movie the loudest standing ovation I've ever given in a film before in my life. I'm telling you guys, like, maybe watching this movie, like, my first viewing of this movie, I was on shrooms, and I was in that theater wanting to absolutely hug the screen. I wanted to hug the entire screen because the colors, everything was just resonating with me so beautifully. And then on top of that, I am just one of the biggest Spider-Man fan in the world, and I haven't felt emotion like this from a Spider-Man movie since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, which is also one of my favorite films of all time. I mean, this is the definition of a perfect sequel to me. I understand a lot of people have issues with the cliffhanger, but that cliffhanger truly only builds on to the tremendous storytelling this movie was already doing. It's like, I don't need a conclusion to what I just witnessed because I need time to assess what just happened here in this film. I mean, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was something of a tremendous achievement for me. Not only just for me personally, just being a Spider-Man fan, but it's a tremendous achievement for those who don't consider animation cinema. Because if you watch this film and you walk away not thinking that this movie is everything that everything that people need nowadays, everything that we need as moviegoers, if you think if this movie does not resonate with people who love film in the way it's supposed to, all because it's animated, you are 1,000% wrong. It is what it is. I'm not expecting everybody to have this movie at their number one, but I promise you, this movie for me wowed me in ways I never truly expected. And the reason it shocked me all the more was because Into the Spider-Verse was absolutely wicked. Like, that Into the Spider-Verse was already so damn good. And so walking into this one, I'm thinking to myself, are they expecting to, like, top themselves? Because that Into the Spider-Verse was way better than anything I was expecting. So what is this supposed to be? And this is that's, once the movie started, that's my reaction to completely everything. I was just literally just jaw on the floor from the very beginning. Literally, no joke, from the very beginning of that movie to the very end. And then I gave one of the loudest standing ovations I've ever given in a movie. I literally clapped through the entire credit sequence. I cried. I literally, after my first showing of this film, I walked out, talked with my friends for a little bit. We saw that there was an 11:30 show. I ran into that thing and watched that movie again. And even thinking about it now, like, that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse for me was truly one of my favorite moments of 2023, because it, like, there's nothing like seeing a film and you truly see yourself up there, and it's one that you feel like you really, like, actually see yourself and can relate to the characters through. I've always saw myself in Spider-Man, Peter Parker. I've always seen myself in Miles Morales, like, whatever variant you want to call it. I've always seen myself in the Spider-Man character, just very misunderstood person with this special ability that nobody can really talk about, or that he can't really share with the world because he's too afraid of what it'll do to his world and things like that, and it'll get people hurt and all this other stuff. And just how Peter's somebody who is really struggling with life, struggling to stay organized, things like that. Like, I have always seen myself in a Spider-Man character and a Spider-Man movie, and in Across the Spider-Verse gave me a reason to love this character so much more and literally be the biggest Spider-Man fan, be proud of being one of the biggest Spider-Man fan in the world. And look, that's my top 10, guys. I really do appreciate you for watching. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Look, what are your top 10 movies of the year? Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let's get a conversation started. What did you think about my top 10? What did you think should have made it? Hey, look, for those who want to kill me for John Wick and Killers of the Flower Moon and The Killer, not being here, I'm all for it. Bring it on. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted those movies to make it, but they just didn't. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and so much more. Look, thank you so much. This is your guy in the chair. More content coming to you soon.